Volunteers in the garden, Holly.
Volunteer plants.
Yeah,
not like volunteer people.
No volunteer people in the garden,
maybe.
but volunteer plants in the garden. And what the people often are not familiar in what is occurring is in the spring, we've had a long winter in most portions of the country, and we go in and we either till the garden or we just scrape it clean and we start with a brand new clean slate. But at that particular time, there is some vegetation that is growing. And if you're not keen on what certain plant identifications are, you will destroy some of these plants in which are coming back that you don't have to plant. It may not be in the place you want them to come up, but they're coming up, and you can maneuver them into certain locations or allow them to grow naturally where they're at.
Yeah, we've done this with tomatoes and lettuce and probably other things.
Not root crops. Don't do this with like radishes.
You don't want to do this with radishes, but that it can happen. You can get the volunteers, and since most radishes are like 30 days,
it's a gift.
It is a gift. Since most radishes grow within 30 days, it's probably not a huge deal if they're somewhere.
Work around it.
Yeah, you can work around it. I like the fact that there are sunflowers that do this, and then
if you have like a bird feeder and you're feeding sunflower or a mixture of it, typically around that bird feeder, that's where all these things are going to pop up the next year.
Right. Yep. And you can even, if you feed chickens too, you might have that. If they don't, chickens are usually pretty good at finding their seed. But yeah, like you said, a bird feeder.
You would have milo and corn and sunflower and all that all that stuff that comes in. Now with the sunflower,
is milo a grain?
Milo is a grain. Yeah, yeah. It is harvested like any other type of farm agricultural grain. Yes.
Okay.
Whenever with the sunflowers, let's talk on that, because people will say, "Well, I've got sunflowers growing. I didn't plant them, and they have so many more heads, so many more flowers than the ones I plant normally."
I don't. So basically, when this happens, it's just because it becomes stronger.
A natural mutation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mutation. And we had this happen, I think 2 summers ago.
Yes.
And it was like 10 feet tall or something.
Well, we did a reel on it or a Facebook and a YouTube video. How tall was my sunflower? I think it was 16 foot, and it had 8 or 10 or 12 flowers on it, and the stalk was over 3 inches across, not around, across. It was like a tree. And it was solid, which I probably should have known this, because with the excessive winds, you just can't have sunflowers being hollowed stem and stand up.
Right.
It was a solid stem that I used an actual hand saw to cut it down.
And there was some storms in the area.
And trees were toppling.
Yeah, trees were toppling over, and we had the sunflower that just was like, whatever. Yeah.
Tomatoes, yes, you can get, if you're not picking your tomatoes or they've fallen or they've rotten and you just chucked them in other portions of the garden, you're going to have them come up. Now, you don't know if it is a Wisconsin 55 or a Abraham Lincoln or a mortgage lifter, whatever comes up. Now, free plants is free plants, and they're going to do just fine. I experimented with this particular practice this past year, a spring, where we just planted seed in one portion of the bed, and the other ones were transplants. And they are both the same size now and producing the same amount of plants, or same amount of fruit. So in future now, we are not going to start tomatoes indoors. We are simply going to go in the garden, designated area. We're going to put weed fabric down because we're tired of doing that game with the weeds, and just puncture the holes and plant the seed and call it good.
Are you a seed believer now?
Not for tomatoes. Now, peppers and eggplants and everything.
Right. I'm talking about tomatoes, though.
Right. Tomatoes, this seems to be the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told you.
Okay.
Did I prove you right?
You proved me right.
I'm kind of glad we're not going to plant tomatoes inside, just because
space.
I mean, yeah, it's space, and I'm really invested in my goth garden, and so I might have to start some seeds inside.
We talked about that last week on the program. If you didn't hear that, you can certainly send us an email to gardentalkradio@gmail.com. We'll send you the podcast link to that. You can also find it under Season 7 tab at our website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Pumpkins, we just harvested a pumpkin the size of a volleyball. It's probably about 2.5 pounds, maybe 3 on the high end. But it was, I don't know, apparently one of the beds had pumpkins in it. We haven't planted pumpkins in years. We've never planted pumpkins at all in our raised beds.
No.
So we don't know where this came from.
Yeah, that
it
is
is just a
weird.
traditional orange jack-o'-lantern pumpkin. That's all it is.
We never did.
No. There was pumpkins there about 10
Maybe
years
it came
ago.
from like the compost.
Well, possibly. That would possibly be the only explanation because we had all kinds of compost. Yeah, and it wasn't broken. But that's you need to know what these plant identifications are, the leaf structure, the makeup of it. Lettuce is a very common thing that if you've let your lettuce plants go to seed, your leaf lettuce, it's going to shatter and scatter hundreds and thousands of seeds throughout your garden, and you can have free lettuce that you don't have to plant. Now, you may have to work around certain areas. And if you don't get it to it before your neighborhood rabbits or the country rabbits get to it, then you're not going to have that. But you need to be aware of what these plants look like. Not necessarily on two realms. One on it's springtime, walk into the garden, want to see what's growing. But on a secondary level, you've planted these things and you need to know what they look like so you can weed around them and you're not pulling up the plant in which you're growing.
Right. It's important to know that. And also just make sure that, because I feel like there's weeds that kind of look like tomatoes because they have like that darty leaves. But I guess if you transplant a weed, eventually it's just not going to do anything and you'll know.
Well, it'll be 7 foot tall and your tomato plant will be 3 inches. So it'll be
right. So I
very
guess
quickly.
There's that too. It's good to know. And also, I can't imagine that there's something that you would get a volunteer on that would be bad, but just...
You need to identify.
Identify as best as possible. But again, it's something where if eventually it will either create what you thought it should create or grow whatever you thought it should grow, and then or it won't. So
now with the seeds that have dropped, let's talk about tomatoes because that is everybody grows tomatoes. There may be a small percentage chance that it is crossed with another tomato. Very unlikely, but there could be, you may have a cross pollination of a tomato. And that's how new varieties are formed. It's not going to be a poisoned item. It may not have the taste or the different levels of flavor in which the previous one had. But if you're like, I've never seen this kind of tomato, you might have a unique one. It may have the very different characteristics. Sunflowers, you're not gonna really have to worry about that. Lettuce, if you have multiple different varieties of lettuce, you're not gonna have an issue with that. Pumpkins, this is where you're gonna get the problem at. Pumpkins, squash family, you can, and we have had spaghetti squash that's crossed with a zucchini, and it's not that pleasant of a harvest item to consume.
It was kind of
it's like eating a green pumpkin.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, it was very stringy, very dense, and was not pleasant.
Like earthy in a bad way.
Yeah,
almost,
earthy in a bad way. Now you're
what's earthy in a good way? Beets.
Beets, turnips, rutabagas.
Oh yeah.
Those type of items. Now with the pumpkins and the squash and everything, it's if you're growing it this year and it looks fine, that's fine. But if there's a chance of pollination cross, then you don't want to save those seeds. Use those pumpkin seeds for pumpkin seed flour or roasted pumpkin seeds or a variety of other types of dishes which you can save. Use them and save them. Some people will like bake them and then they'll dry them and vacuum seal them and they'll eat pumpkin seeds all year long. I mean, someone's getting pumpkin seeds. You can get them in the store year round, so why can't you do it at home?
Yeah, that's a good point. You can do that.
And you also can have volunteers when it comes to flowers, too. These flowers...
Oh, yeah, they reseed themselves.
Yeah.
Nature does that. You know, sometimes if it's something like a marigold where they have the real floaty seeds. I mean, if you think about dandelions, those reseed themselves.
Milkweed will reseed itself very heavily.
There's all sorts of things that you might not even realize. Sunflowers obviously can reseed themselves. So anything, I'm sure, in that family, the sunflower.
Oh, and weeds. Weeds can reseed themselves.
Yeah.
Much more rapidly than...
I mean, like, let's think about Creeping Charlie.
Yeah, well, that's out of control in a lot of places. And without chemical application, you're really not going to get it back in check. You just can kind of control it. Weeds, on the other hand, there are many of you who potentially are in the same category as Holly and I. We've weeded hard, and it didn't look like we did anything. But the tomatoes, the peppers, the eggplants, the green beans are doing phenomenal. And we just kind of let it go. And next year we'll get some weed fabric from Jung Seeds, jungseed.com, and cover the beds and take more of a controlled position on the weeds so we don't have to spend hours weeding like we did this year and come back 3 weeks later and doesn't look like we did anything.
It does feel very endless and frustrating and a lot of things.
But we're in raised beds. We've done it when it was in the physical ground, and it was even worse because I would spend literally 40 hours, days, 40 hours total. Let's pick, a week's worth of time in the garden weeding, deep weeding a 3 foot by 10 foot section, and then there would be a 2 foot walk path, and then another section.
I mean, you used to have me help you, and I would be like, I would get so mad.
And we would weed to where it was pristine, and in 3 weeks, you couldn't tell we did anything. Now, we were probably disturbing some weed seeds, but you would think that there would be something there of a longer term fake feel-good moment than that. So
I don't understand how it's so weedy.
Well, I do understand that Walton's has a wonderful discount as you listeners have exercised it, and that's why they're coming back next year for season 8 of the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. And Holly, what is that?
Well, yeah, so that's code GROW50 to save 10% off orders $50 or more. And Walton's, if you're not familiar with Walton's, they have everything that you need but the meat. So they have equipment, seasoning, and supplies to make sausage, jerky, and any other meat product your way to your high standards. Do you want to make snack sticks that people will actually like? Walton's created meatgistics.com, an informational site to help you make the best finished product. Walton's even has a full line of their meat grinders, mixers, sausage stuffers, and more to help you go from animal to edible. So that's waltonsinc.com. Use code GROW50, GROW50 to save 10% off your orders or $50 or more. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.